Hi, I'm Brandon. I work at BC ElectronicLibrary Network, and I am here to tell you a bit about Arca, BC's collaborative digital repository. I'm going to go over a few aspects of the project, what Arca is, why it exists, what it's built on, how it works, what doesn't work, how we're paying for it, and maybe why you should care. Of course, I can't make you care, but who knows, you might get something useful out of this. Arca is a post-secondary digital repository based on an Islandora multisite. We have 12 members and growing, so this logo picture is out of date. Each of them are using it for different things. We have the University of Northern British Columbia, which uses it as an institutional repository with over 1,500 dissertations and theses. We have Emily Carr University, which has digitized photo collections and graduate art projects. We have Douglas College, which plans to host videos of student theatrical productions. Each member institution has its own repository website, which is focused on its own collections, while the parent site, Arca, allows searching and browsing of all the collections together. Each site is locally managed but follows guidelines and policies set up collaboratively at the consortial level. And it's hosted off-site on third-party cloud service maintained and supported by discoverygarden, who you're going to hear from later this week. I'm the technical lead on the project, despite a total lack of formal technical training, but it works. So let me tell you a bit about why Arca exists, how it got started. So look way back in time to the bad old days of academic publishing, 2014, when the government would spend a fortune on public money to fund research, the results of which got published by big commercial entities, who then turned around and charged the public a fortune to access those results. Of course, everything's changed since then, right? In 2014, the Tri-Council mandate was announced. I'm sure most of you, being in Canada, have heard of it, but I'll go over it anyway. So effective in May 2015, the three major grant funding agencies, Canada Institutes of Health Research, Natural Sciences Engineering Research Council of Canada, and the Social Sciences Humanities Research Council, have a policy called the Tri-Agency Open Access Policy on Publications. Basically it says that all publications based on research funded by these three organizations after May 1st, 2015, have to be in an open access repository within 12 months of publications. So, government agencies committing to open access, huzzah! But what does this mean for our institutions, especially the smaller ones without a lot of money? Well, it means that many of our members needed access to an institutional repository in order to keep accessing research grants, but few of them had the money to build and maintain one. Enter BC ELN. We are a post-secondary library consortium. Our purpose is to develop, promote, and maintain system-wide mechanisms that allow post-secondary libraries to meet the expanding information needs of the province's learners, educators, and researchers at the lowest possible cost, which I think I copied and pasted from a website. Basically, we do things on behalf of our members more cheaply than they could do it themselves, and we leverage their collaboration into bigger, better, cooler things. We do a lot of collaborative licensing of electronic resources, we manage a host of shared services, and our libraries came to us and said, we need repositories and we can't spend a lot of money. Can you help? So we approached the Ministry of Advanced Education. It was good timing. Having recently done their own review of their own goals, the ministry was looking for opportunities to invest in shared services, and of course they have an interest in showcasing the research done in British Columbia. So we presented a business case proposing a single shared platform that connects individual repositories into a sort of repository network, satisfying a bunch of government and library interests all at once. The ministry was particularly interested in the idea that multiple repositories could be searched from a single place. So we got 2 years seed funding to set up a shared repository, totaling $100,000, which is long gone, but I'll get more into the money side later. When we were first approached about getting involved with digital repositories, the assumption was that we'd approach it like any other license, a commercial product with separate license for each institution and discounted pricing thanks to our collaborative negotiating power, which is how we approach most things. But the approach we ended up taking was a bit of a departure for us. What we ended up with was a repository as a service, a single shared repository running on open source software, which took some selling. There's a lot of fear about open source, especially at smaller libraries. And an administrative center providing frontline support. That's me. So here's how it works. We have overarching policies set by an advisory committee made up of members. We work with a third party that handles hosting, maintenance, tech support, freeing us from needing to do server management, backups, things like that. And that means that I can act as a technical lead on the project despite my limited ability to code and manage servers. Islandora is open source, so there's no software license fee. We're just paying for their work and the hosting. And BC ELN coordinates the committees and the working groups that make the project work, and we provide the frontline support. We manage the money, we work with the vendor, and when there are problems or requests, member sites interact with us. When issues come up, I try to resolve them, often with the help of the amazingly supportive Islandora user and developer community, and I escalate anything that I can't figure out to our vendor. So, why do it collaboratively? Why share a repository? Well, central coordination means that members dedicate very little staffing to their repository if they want to. Most sites have 0.2 FTE staff position. Some of them do it off the side of their desks. Since each individual repository is also part of the larger provincially scaled one, that means there's more exposure for the work produced at those institutions, which makes it easier to build a case for funding a repository and easier to attract content from faculty. And this is particularly true when you have slow-growing collections. It's easier to make a case for hosting them when they're part of a larger whole. And having common policies means we share standards, which is important for interoperability and discovery. Our member sites have different skills and expertise like metadata, technical, copyright, so no single member has to be an expert on everything. We pool our resources to set development goals that benefit everybody. And of course, the biggest one is affordability. When we priced out the commercial options that were available, we found that sites could expect to pay $20,000 to $25,000 per year for popular products like Digital Commons. With Arca's cost-sharing model, with all of the external funding gone now, sites are paying under $6,000 a year. And we pay in Canadian dollars, so we don't have to worry about the cost suddenly going up 50%. So a consortial implementation means having a repository is possible for sites that otherwise wouldn't be able to do it. So if you're interested in how a consortial repository gets off the ground, let's look back at how we got there. BC ELN follows the same implementation process for each of our projects involving our community wherever possible at every step. So our committees and working groups have leadership from each of the early adopter sites who are willing to jump in head first. Starting with a strategic vision, including a concept committee made up of those institutions that were interested in the project. We poll our members to understand what their needs are, better define our requirements, figure out where the funding would come from, set up an advisor committee pulled from our membership to guide the project's direction, form a software selection committee to go through a rigorous selection process, form an implementation team, figure out how things are going to work, recruit early adopters, involve them in laying out the system, and work toward a sustainable long-term participant-funded model. Key thing is to make it easy, having something to show. We used the funding we got from the government to subsidize the early adopters' fees. Then once we had a pilot to show, we could put a call out for additional participants. Now we have 12 members with repositories in Arca, and we're about to expand outside BC through an agreement with COPL, the Council of Prairie and Pacific University Libraries, and possibly beyond into public libraries and some other stuff. So why Islandora? Islandora supports our consortial approach. Since it has a Drupal front end, we can base our repositories on a Drupal multisite. Each member having its own unique child site, sharing one Drupal code base, making it easy for us to administer centrally. And then they run on a shared Fedora repository, so it's easy for the parent site to display content from all of the members. Islandora is open source. If it were up to me, the platform being open source would have been one of the requirements for software selection. It was a harder sell for the software selection committee, but they were convinced after seeing the demonstrations. So I know I'm preaching to the choir more or less. Working with open source software is awesome because there's so much flexibility. You don't have to wait for the vendor to make something a priority. You need something done, you could do it yourself, or pay somebody to do it, or talk with the user community, see if someone's already working on it. I've even started learning to write Drupal and Islandora modules myself because of my work on this project, and I can show that off later. The Islandora community in particular is fantastic. They're really well organized, very responsive, and great to work with, and part of that is thanks to Melissa. So I've opened at least 24 tickets regarding bug fixes and improvements, and I feel like they've all been seriously considered by the developer community, and many have been incorporated into later or upcoming releases. Of course, the open source platform is less perfectly packaged and intuitive than commercial products might be, but I find that the community and the freedom is totally worth it. We have Canadian hosting and support. Our support company is Canadian, the product is Canadian, our hosting is Canadian, which is hard to do with any other product. And I'll get into the reasons why this is important later, as well as the complications. And of course, a great price. Since there's no software license, we just pay for hosting, support, and maintenance, and we're able to develop the expertise to take care of at least some of those things ourselves. All BC ELN projects have a document detailing the benefits and responsibilities for a member defined by their advisory committees. This describes the relationship between Arca and its participants, and some of the key benefits are access to the Arca Administrative Center, which is us, providing frontline support, licensing, negotiation, training. The Admin Center holds a contract with discoverygarden, who provides our hosting and support. We support our libraries, discoverygarden supports us, and you have to be a BC ELN partner library for now. As I mentioned before, we're building relationship with our sister consortia, COPL, to allow their members to participate as well, and for Arca members to participate in their digital preservation network. And we're going to relate the project soon. So soon we're going to have benefits and responsibilities for non-BC ELN people as well. Responsibilities include providing a yearly service support fee, about $6,000 per site per year. That amount's going to change in the future once we move to a new storage model with more options, but we're keeping it low. They also have to participate in administrator meetings and working groups. We consider it very important to get input from our community on policies and the development of any enhancements or changes. So the group votes on the items that they consider to be important to them. And this lets us determine what kinds of things are important to the group and therefore a priority for Arca versus customizations that individual members want and only they want, which they'd have to take care of themselves. Arca, like most Islandora sites, employs the mods metadata schema. Metadata standards are based on documentation from DPLA metadata application profile, contributions from BCIT and the DLF Aquifer mods guidelines. So all of our documentation is open, accessible, and transparent for interoperability with other projects. So, as I said, we are growing fast. We have 12 participating libraries. As I said, this thing is out of date. Over 9,600 objects. Actually, I think that's up to 10,500 now in 140 collections. COPL sites coming on stream later on this season. And it's foundational to the BC Provincial Digital Library Initiative, which is a whole BC thing that hopefully we'll be in a position to talk about maybe next year. So I'm going to add some unpredictability and potential failure points to this presentation with a live demo. And we'll see if this will work. Oops, where are we? So we'll do a search across all of our member sites. One of our problems, the connection is kind of slow on our current host, but that's going to change. So note that the paper I'm actually looking for is, with the keyword in the title, is a little further down. Some solar configuration can be a bit arcane, and there's some kind of wizardry behind the scenes telling us that bottom-up employees is a better match for asshole than, let's see if I can find it. There we go. That's the paper I was looking for. Anyway, that's something to look into at some point. So we've got all the things that you'd expect. You have the thesis that is OCR'd. Full text is part of the search. We've got, oops, let me go back. We've got facets from solar, date slider. You can facet on the institution that it came from, the collections that it lives in, topics, all that lovely stuff. And you can download your results in CSV, you can set up an RSS feed, and all of that stuff is really part of Islandora core, which is awesome. So you've seen Arca. You can take a look at member sites. This is the University of the Fraser Valley site. It's using the same theme, but they've changed, things with it to change the colors, made some of their own tweaks to incorporate it with their institution's style guidelines. Where's Emily Carr? There's Emily Carr's. They've done things of their own. They've made their own browse interface a little prettier than the standard one. Let me show you the standard one. The standard one is not very sexy. Wait 10 minutes for it to load. There it is, yeah. Not very sexy standard interface. This is much prettier, done with Photoshop. It's all done with standard things like Drupal views. And let's look at a couple of customizations that benefit from the open source nature of the project. If you go to, if we go down to an image, this is a very simple module, created by Mark Jordan at SFU, who is an Islandora wizard and the chair of the Islandora Foundation. Very lucky we have him as a resource. This extracts cartographic information from an object's mods record and plots it on a Google map. Here's another one. All these lovely little things which don't look so good when you shrink it down into a funny resolution like this. This is the results of my own attempt at learning how to write modules. I call it Islandora badges. Our members wanted a way to display metrics about objects in the repository, especially citation counts. And nothing exists natively in the software for this, but because Islandora is open source, I could write my own. This module reads the mods record of an object, sends an API request to 3 different services: Altmetric, which tracks social media interactions, Web of Science, and the Scopus for citation counts. To make this, I took the code from an existing module that was written at the Islandora conference last year. That's the Altmetric piece, and just hacked the code a little bit because I didn't know what else to do with it. And that accomplishes the other tasks. And as a side bonus, again, open source benefits, this saves us from having to spend many, many thousands of dollars on a tool that we were considering. This pitched by a vendor that does essentially the same thing. We're going to be offering to share this with the Islandora Foundation very soon. What else? There's another one here. This usage information comes from Piwik, which is an open source Google Analytics type tool. The interaction with Islandora was developed again by Mark Jordan. And in addition to various other metrics, which is taking again a long time to load, it lets us display a map of a real-time usage map showing where in the world people are when they use our site, which is right here. And oh, great. I just updated Piwik, so it's giving me this, hey, you just updated Piwik thing. Sorry about that. All right, I'm just going to go back into the thing so you can see it like that instead. There you go. So you can see somebody was using it in Barbados, people using it in Italy, in France, in India, and all over the place, and you can see what they're interacting with, which is kind of cool. All right. So some challenges and successes, open source, bugs and enhancements, learning how differently these needs to be dealt with in the open source environment compared to vendor environment, like scholar profiles. Great interest to most of our sites because being attracted to faculty who want to showcase their work in their repository in one convenient place. I didn't think I'd have to go back in here. But are we there? Apologies. Yeah, I'm not going to bother with it. You can get a picture of your scholar. You can get information about them. You can get a whole list of their, there it is. A whole list of their publications that are in the repository. Lovely thing about live demos. There we go. Little profile there. RSS feed of his stuff. Apparently he hasn't put anything in here yet, but he's got all his colleagues in kinesiology, research interest, all of these things. What else? We would like to be able to attach other kinds of content to the Scholar's profile, like books, images, and video, which isn't currently possible because the Scholar module is hard-coded for citations and theses only. That would make it much useful for other sites that aren't doing the academic research necessarily, like Douglas College or Emily Carr, which might want to do images, videos. We brought that use case to the Islandora community, and there was interest from others. Put in a JIRA ticket. I was invited to a committers call to talk about it with the developers, and they're working on it. Oh, there's no firm timeline on when it's going to be done. Issues with storage and scalability. As you saw, scalability-wise, we have some speed problems at the moment. Storage is kind of an issue with us with our current hosting company. I'm sure many of you have struggled with Canadian privacy laws. In BC, as well as other provinces, anything containing personal information must be hosted on servers that reside within Canada's borders. Now, I'm not going to get into whether something like an open access repository actually falls under this category, but our members prefer to be cautious. So having all of our hosting and support interactions happening in Canada was a requirement for the project. Happily, with Islandora being originally developed in PEI, it leads to lots of good options. Some negative implications on our speed and the cost, but we're working on it. And as we bring on more sites, and as our sites recruit content for their IRs, storage and scalability are becoming pressures. Things like video. We have a small amount of video in Arca right now. Douglas College has a few interesting little student documentaries, which are small, but they generate tremendous derivatives, different formats of video that are 3 times the size of the original. So they can take up triple the amount of stores that you think they should. There's a lot of great video content that our members would love to add to Arca and the capability to stream it, but the scalability is a big problem. Happily, we're working on switching to another solution, which will be more flexible, more scalable, faster, and cheaper than what we got now. We're just not there yet. We have some successes in meeting diverse needs. We have differing resource levels, sites that may only have someone doing this off the side of their desk. They can still provide an IR for the institution, and they can get information from each other. We have different types of content. Emily Carr is highly visual. JIBC, the Justice Institute of BC, which trains firefighters, police officers, people like that. Lots of crime report things and health guides, stuff like that. What else? Working on building a community of practice in BC. Let's see. We've got shared documentation to help new sites with little technical expertise. We've got lots of training materials from Islandora camps. We have Arca hours that I host theoretically every week, but much less regularly than that. And they're all recorded here on individual topics. We have ingest manual with lots of documentation about how to do things. We have metadata application profiles, not fully fleshed out yet. We have a sandbox virtual machine that anyone can download and play with. We're working on getting vagrant machines that will reflect the latest Arca code base. And we're working with the Islandora Foundation to get Islandora into library school classrooms, which will give students the chance to work with repository software that is relevant to their future careers in BC, which is rapidly becoming an Islandora everywhere kind of province. And also provide libraries with new grads who would know how to run their repositories. So that's Arca. Let me go back here. See how much I skipped over here. Yeah. If you weren't paying attention this whole time, and I wouldn't blame you, here's a summary. Having a repository is a good thing and a growing need, especially in Canada. Open source is good. Of course, this particular crowd is probably already pretty solid on that. Islandora is good. We like Islandora. BC likes Islandora. You should like Islandora too. And collaboration is awesome. There are tons of benefits, not the least of which is saving a whole pile of money. And if any of you are thinking about repositories, want to talk more about your options, or if you're in a consortium thinking about getting into the collaborative repository game, I'd be happy to chat with you over a beer or something. And if I'm sure we have time for questions because I just motored through that. I am happy to elaborate on whatever I skimmed too quickly over earlier in the talk. that's it.
Questions? Anybody?
Thank you very much. That was really, really good. I really like that. I was wondering if you could speak to how each site is customized. You mentioned that there's work done locally as well as through Discovery Garden and as well as through you. So I'm just wondering, like the customization we saw in terms of the themes and the choices that were made locally, who's behind developing those changes?
Yeah, well, when we worked out things with Discovery Garden at the start, we had requirements about the theme. Together we came up with sort of the framework that the theme should look like. So that's with the large picture in the background and the sort of a box in the front with a configurable menu and search and everything like that, and the option to choose whatever colors you like, things like that. That's all basic stuff. More particularly when you're doing a search, why did I search on nothing? Let's just see if we get anything there. So individual sites can customize which facets show up here, how they're formatted. They can choose how search displays, whether as a list or in a weird interface, a browser interface, which fields show up here, how they work, what they look like, how they're linked, if they're linked. Yeah, all the facet stuff. They can do pretty much anything outside of the back-end code. They can choose which modules to activate as well. Our module collection is administered centrally, but they can choose whether to enable or disable them, where to put their blocks, if they want to use the blocks, all that stuff. So they have full control over the Drupal side of things and the Solr stuff.
My university is actually in the Arca Consortium, but I'm just new, so I don't know everything yet. I was wondering if there are any current or future plans at a consortial level to increase adoption and outreach of the repositories at the individual institutions.
So you mean work at the consortial level to promote the individual repositories?
Yeah, like maybe I'm thinking like if there's any sort of standard, I guess, promotional materials or draft policies or work to, I guess, get it in, because we have we've established one just at the end of 2015, but of course there's still work to do to get it adopted and into the workflows.
Yep, my partner on this project, Sunny, who is the coordinator, she coordinates the people and committee side of things, just sent out an email today, or yesterday actually, to all the administrators asking about shared policies and things like we could set up as a framework for the policy side. On the promotion side, there are a number of things that we're looking at in the collaborative sense and some resources we're offering. I put on my last slide there, this is just a silly thing, but it was fun anyway. I put on my last slide there the Twitter handle for our Twitter bot, which I set up recently, which tweets random content from Arca. And I sent a message out to all of our admins asking them if they wanted one. And so I have set up resources for you guys to have your own bots. Other things include something I learned about at the Pacific Northwest Institutional Repository user group, which was very cool. Somebody had created a tool that would automatically email people who at their institutions who have recently published something and invite them to put into the repository and send summaries of what's been put in by email to various groups. It's pretty cool. I'm looking into that more. Yeah. We're working on it. But of course, promotion is mainly up to the individual institutions.
I just wanted to make sure that I heard something right.
Yeah.
Went past really quick. You've got the centralized services and the sorts of things that you're doing administratively at your office, and you've got local controls in the various member institutions. But did you say that there were particular roles, like copyright issues, that
Sorry?
a individual at one of the member institutions was handling for all the member institutions? Did I hear that right?
No.
Okay.
It's more theoretically every week, but of course, it's summer recently, people are on vacation and things. But regularly we have meetings of the administrators at each institution, and they work together on trading ideas and advice for certain things that they are expert in. So at one institution, the administrator might not be an expert on copyright. Another institution, they might be more expert at metadata. And we have also, in our setup, used their resources to help set up our shared policies, like our metadata guidelines and things like that. But there's no official role that individual institutions take in providing service for all the others. It's more informal, collaborative, I think.
Any more questions? If not, then I'll ask you to join me in thanking our speaker.